webinar series. Okay, our fourth webinar series, Simple Tools, Setting Smart Objectives, Outputs, and Outcomes. And as we go forward, about the Good Practice Movement, the Good Practice Movement is a support and culture, actually promotes a support and culture of continuous improvement. It fosters exchange of knowledge and experiences. And we also have shared tools and techniques to foster good practices in the work that we do, and recognizes good practices, and also contributes to our sustainable development. And the Group Practice Movement, we have the forum group. So remember the forum? I am Binta Ernest. I will be one of your co-hosts, and I am a public policy social development professional. I specialize in human rights and gender. And my co-host is Randy Montoot. Randy is an IT specialist. We also have Jacqueline Messiah Simeon, who's a gender specialist. Cole Ansador, who's a project management specialist. Leah Gard, who's an entrepreneur and marketing. Jessica Edward, administration. Marina Gomez Baptiste in accounting and finance and small business. Samantha Ernest, HR, and our facilitator this evening, Miss Betty Comby. She's a quality assurance professional, so she will be leading the presentation this evening. But before we begin our presentation, we'll do a few housekeeping rules. So just ensure that your microphones have been muted and will be muted during the Q&A until you raise your hands. If you have questions, you raise your hands. You can also utilize the chat as best as you can. And we have the co-host, Mr. Randy Montoot, will be monitoring the chat for us. And during the question and answer segment, please use the raise hand icon so we can see you, and type Q before your question. And just be respectful of all persons, and just sit back, be willing to learn, share your experiences with us, and have a good, I guess, hour and a half with us. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Binta. And we have Kizzy Waldney coming in. Randy, to admit Kizzy. I noticed that Ms. Turville, Celia is on board. Celia, welcome. Good to have you here. Okay, and so let's get into it.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Great, great. And so again, we ask that you remain muted until the question and answer section, or when you do have a question and answer, because yeah, it's just a matter of the background noise we're concerned about. So once the presentation is over, we encourage people to turn on their mics and talk to us versus just writing in the chat. But during the presentation, if you can write in the chat, and then Randy would pick it up. Okay, so Randy is there to pick up any questions you have, as any comments you might have, but also to monitor what's going on your side. And so we're going to we'll discuss objectives and goals. We'll talk about outputs and outcomes at work and at home. We will talk about SMART objectives, which is what this session is about. We'll have questions and answers. There'll be a call to join the forum group. We will tell you more about the forum group and the GPM group. And then as always, we ask from you. I mean, we have prepared this, we are executing, and we have to do our checks. And so we just ask that before you leave, that you just give some feedback as to how the session went. So you can just type your feedback in the chat. Okay, so people are coming in, but we are continuing, and we want to thank those people who were here on time, and we plan not to waste your time. So setting SMART objectives, and then we have to talk about output and outcome, because we're doing well as far as identifying our outputs, but we're not doing so well as identifying the outcome. And so we need to make that distinction as we go along. So let's start off with goals and objectives. And goals and objectives are what you are trying to achieve. When we talk about a goal, we look at a broad aim. When we talk about an objective, we are more specific, and we should be measurable. The thing about measurable objectives is that they are verifiable. And so that is an indicator for you. The objective is measurable if it is verifiable. So if you're saying this is the value associated with it, then somebody else can come and verify that's exactly what it is. Okay, then if we're talking goals and we're talking objectives, let's make mention of strategies as well. Okay, and strategies are usually general approaches or action used to achieve the goals or the objectives. And then if we're talking measurability, let's talk targets. And targets are those pre-agreed values to be achieved at the end of the period. Okay, so this is just going through those different keywords of goals, objectives, strategies, and targets, right? Again, the difference between objectives and goals, both of them, you're trying to achieve something, but the goal is broader. I mean, a good example I've been told with regard to goals and objectives, if you think of an umbrella, right? Think of the whole umbrella as the goal and the spokes. Is that what you call, Binta? That's what you call the wires in the umbrella. It's like a wheel. The spokes are then the objectives. So it's all of those objectives together that's going to give you a goal. Are we okay with that, Binta and Randy, so far?
Yeah.
And okay, beautiful. And so we're moving on, and then we needed to make the distinction between output and outcome. And then we must talk process. If you're talking outputs and outcome, then we're talking processes. Okay, and a process is simply a set of interrelated activities. What's going into the process is called the inputs. Now, what I find is when we think of inputs, a lot of us tend to think of just resources, but we are missing that important part called information. So when we talk about input, it's not just tangible resources, but it's that intangible thing of information is so very important. Because think of it, a key input to any process is, for instance, is what are the requirements of the recipient or the customer? And this is not something that's tangible. That's something that's intangible. A key input into trying to do anything right would be, for instance, doing a risk assessment. Again, that is something that is intangible, not tangible. Okay, so keep that in mind. When we're talking inputs, we're looking at both information and resources. Then you have your process, which is simply just a series of steps that are interrelated. And what you get at the end of your process is an output. Output is your product or service, or the generic word of deliverable. Because the end of your process can be a report or just information. That is a deliverable. So I like the word deliverable. I find it's close to what did I deliver? What did I deliver? I delivered a deliverable, right? Or it can be a product or it can be a service. So what you deliver is your product, your service, or your deliverable. And we are very good at that. We have no problem there. However, we need to go further. We need to go further and determine, did we get our desired impact, our desired effect, our desired consequence? Did we get satisfaction from the recipient or from the customer? And that is the outcome. Okay, so the difference between output and outcome. Now, another way to think of it is I like to tell people your output, you have full control. You can have full control of your output because it's up to you to deliver. But when it comes to the outcome, there are usually other people involved, right? So if you think of customer satisfaction, you might have felt you satisfied the customer, but it is the customer that has to tell you if they're satisfied, okay? And so sometimes the impact you're going on some other thing, or it might be the environment that you're trying to impact. It might be the internal environment you're trying to impact, right? You need to get from the people who are experiencing what's happening. So you can speak with certainty on your output, but when it comes to the outcome, you need to get information from other persons. So hoping that is clear, we have an activity coming up now, which we want you to get involved in. And so we're asking you to share an output and an outcome of examples at work and at home. So Randy, Binta, do you want to start off? Or do we have somebody else in the group? Ira, would you want to start off for us with an output and an outcome?
Okay, thank you. So I deal with the healthcare system. So when I hear you, yes, so when I hear you talk about input, it's very important. So when we look at information as an input,
Yes.
we usually look at the processes of our communication. How are we communicating? Via what medium? And so then the output in itself would be the fact that they are getting it. the surveys showing up on time. That can be one of the things that we're getting to, but the outcome with the overall is our customer satisfaction in their waiting
Yes.
time.
Yes, that customer satisfaction is definitely, we must not forget that customer satisfaction is an outcome.
Yes.
And that means you're not in full control of it, right? Because it is dependent on what the customer is experiencing.
Correct.
So very
And
important.
can I just add, Betty, I like the
Yes.
fact that you said about risk assessment, because that's where the risk
Yes.
assessment can come in our communication processes. What are the risks that may not get that communication there?
Yes, very important. I think, yeah, I mean, I've said that already. I think risk management is one of the most important bodies of knowledge house. It is what proactive people do, right? Is you anticipate. Thank you so much, Ira, for sharing that. Randy, we have somebody trying to get admitted. We have Cheyenne trying to come in. Thank you so very much. Can we hear from somebody else, please? In your area of work, and I like the fact that Ira referenced her area of work. So could somebody else tell us in your area, will give us an example of an output and an outcome? Now, you know, for me, my personal favorite example is the Humphrey student who said to me, a GoPuel is a threat to him completing secondary school, right? And then it got into the discussion of a horn versus a GoPuel. So an output would be the horn, but the GoPuel would be the impact. So anybody can give a horn. I can give a horn, you can give a horn, but the person we are giving the horn to does not necessarily experience a GoPuel. So the GoPuel is an outcome. Let's hear some of the output and outcomes examples. Come on, talk to us, people. We're sharing. This is, remember, this is sharing, huh? This is exchange of information going
Yeah.
on. Yes.
Betty,
Yes.
your examples are always so animated and so.
I was just about to ask. I wonder if everybody here knows what a GoPuel.
A GoPuel. Oh, okay. Well, Brandy, you tell him. You tell him what a GoPuel is.
I don't know. I've never experienced it. So
You kidding me? Well, I like the fact that Randy said he has never experienced it. So Randy knows it's something that has to be experienced. Right? And so the GoPuel for people again is if you feel, you know, sometimes when somebody, you're in a relationship, a romantic relationship, and the person hurts you, the person leaves you, then some people go for a depression, a heartache, that's a GoPuel. But again, like we said, that is dependent on the person, right? So all you can guarantee is and one of the way a person can get a GoPuel is you give a horn, you cheat on the person.
yeah.
So all of us have the ability to cheat on somebody. Nobody refrains you from cheating, but the next thing is the person at the receiving end, what did they experience? And they might experience a GoPuel, they might not experience a GoPuel. So let's get some other examples.
Yes,
Someone
we
hands
have-
is up. You have Stephen Louis hand is up.
yeah.
Yes, talk to us, Stephen.
Okay, Betty. Yeah, before I give my example though, if I hadn't attended that webinar tonight, I'd never have made a connection between GoPuel and outcome and impact.
There you go.
I
Now
guess
you know.
that's my takeaway for the night, right? Okay.
Beautiful. It's a good one.
Yeah, a simple example of
Yes.
output versus outcome, so say from the IT field, is the output of your assignment may be to develop and deliver a system that's functioning. In fact, it may even include providing training for the users.
Yes.
But the outcome is the usage of the system and the
Yes.
satisfaction that provides to the users, or the impact, the ability of the users, the actual use of the system to deliver the service that the
Beautiful.
user wants. So that'll be a difference
Beautiful.
between output and
Yes.
outcome.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that one. A very good one. Thank you so much. Let's hear from somebody else. Come on. We have the different professions coming in there.
We have somebody in the chat as well who has
Yes.
Omar. Omar has so Randy, take Omar's thing while I try to lower Stephen's hand.
Yeah. Yeah. So Omar said that he's a graphic designer. The outcome is a flyer promoting an event, and the outcome would be higher attendance at the event.
So the flyer would be the output.
Yeah, the flyer would be the output.
Right, and
and
the outcome would be the attendance. That's right. Very well done. Oh, very nice one. And so that even applies to this webinar. We had a flyer out. We were able to deliver on the flyer, but we couldn't guarantee the attendance, right? Because the attendance was dependent on people deciding. And so this is why it's so important. It's a good thing to start with the outcome. Begin with the end in mind, begin with the outcome and see what is the best output you can give to get that outcome you want. Thank you so much, Omar. That's a very good example. Could we get one last example? So we have graphic design, we had IT, we had health, we had Gopwell and Horn. What else do we have? Come on, let's give another example.
I have my example, what I'm currently working
Yes.
on.
Yes,
I'm
Lisa, go
working
ahead.
on, okay, I do gender mainstreaming. So we're having meetings, trainings, and issuing of templates to the gender focal points across the ministries. And the output are gender action plans. But the outcome, it would be a gender sensitive organization, gender mainstreaming, policies developed, as well as programs which are gender sensitive. These programs impact the organization's customers.
Very good.
So
Very good example. And what you did there was also you gave us examples of immediate outcomes and then long-term outcomes, because a policy would not be an immediate outcome of this.
no,
But it would be a long-term outcome that you're hoping for. Right. So even sometimes the outcomes are broken down into immediate outcomes, intermediate outcomes, and long-term outcomes. And sometimes instead of the word long-term outcomes, they tell you what is the impact. So the terminology is slightly different, but it means the same thing. It's about outputs and it's about outcomes and recognizing the difference. Okay. Are we okay? Randy, do we have any other one, or can we go on?
I think we can move on.
Okay, beautiful. So thank you so much, everybody, for sharing output and outcome. And I think another example, another thing you must recognize too, I find sometimes your output is simply the activity that you did. So for instance, you swept the house. What was your deliverable? Your only deliverable you can claim is you swept the house. Now we will hope an outcome of you sweeping the house is that you now have a clean house. You with me? So sometimes the output is to just claim the activity that took place. So whereas sometimes it is something that's different, but sometimes you can just claim. So if for instance you're preparing a meal, so the output of preparing a meal, your output would be the meal, right? And then the outcome will be, well, how happy the family was with the meal, right? But sometimes it's just you did it, so that's all you can claim, right? And with the hope that the outcome is more. There will be other things involved to make sure the house is clean, but you contributed to clean the house by sweeping the house. Okay, so having said that, let's move on. So let's get into it. That SMART word. S for specific. That means it's clearly defined. And this is so important. And I like to say, what I find being specific does is it really puts everybody on the same page. So when we get it, we know what it looks like because we were specific. I mean, this is where you state acceptance criteria. This is how specific you are. It must be measurable, knowing when it is complete or how as it progress. Again, anything measurable is verifiable. It must be achievable, and there is a realistic path to achieving it. Now, I know the literature sometimes tells you realistic is the R. The international standards, and I agree with the international standards, tell you the R is relevant because to achieve it is because it's realistic. And I think we can agree with that. To say it's achievable is to say it's realistic. So you don't have to put those two words in. And I know some of the literature will tell you that. But the important word relevant is key. Because remember I told you, your goal is the broad aim, and it's like subdivided into objectives. And so all of these objectives have to be aligned to the goals of the organization or to your goals. So relevance ensures alignment. And then T, we have time bound. Now you will see different versions of this, and I will share some with you, and I think some people can also share some with me. Now, Drucker was one of those persons who used that word SMART. And when he used it, the A was assignable, which I find is very important. Who is responsible for or accountable for this particular objective? So in other, so I'm saying a version of that can be SMAART, 2 A's. You can add 2 A's to it, where one of the A is who is assigned to. Very important. You will also see SMART. You will see an E and an R, in that they're telling you that objectives have to be evaluated, right? And then the R, objectives have to be revised, right? And that all these words are important. So this is a base that you can tweak as you want to suit your particular needs. I personally like SMART, where I put that A for assignable, I put that E for evaluated, and the R, the objectives have to be revised, okay, based on data reaching you. So this is what I know about SMART. Let's hear from somebody else who have seen it in another way. Anybody else? Come on, talk to us. This is sharing. Randy, we have somebody waiting to be admitted. Anybody, shall you come across it in another form? Anybody? Nobody, Randy?
Nope, nobody. I've never.
It's not in the
I'm actually
standard for
learning
me
from you
anyway, so.
right now.
Okay. Yeah, so like I said, there are variations to it. But this is a base, and this is the base that the international standards use. I think what I want to reinforce here is the R is relevant. Stop saying the R is realistic. My thing is, if you say the R is realistic, then make the A aligned, right? But something in there has to align the objective to the goal. So either using the word relevant or using the word align. But I think achievable and realistic, Membaila, same thing. Okay, sorry, that was for people coming in from outside of St. Lucia. I said Membaila, meaning the same thing. Okay, Patrick, my apology, coming in from Trinidad. Okay, time bound. Okay, so this is SMART objectives. So let's move on further. Now, if you understand that and you understand output and outcome, there is a exercise with. So we have eight objectives stated here. Some of them are output based and some of them are outcome based. Remember, output based, you are in control. You can deliver. Outcome based, you are depending on other persons or something else to come into play. So how do we do that, Randy? So in the chat, people can write the numbers they think that are output based and the numbers they think that are outcome based. So let's see what's happening in the chat. So in the chat, do you think 1, 2, and 3 and 4, 5, and 6 are output based? And then you think just 7 and 8 are outcome? Do you think 3, 7, and 6 are outcome? The others are output? Let's see what's coming in the chat. So this is your assignment right now, guys. Identifying the output based and the outcome based objectives. And they're all measurable. Huh? They're all measurable, meaning they can be verified. Randy, anything people are writing? People are writing in the chat?
Nobody has yet put anything.
Oh, my people, come on now. Come on, my people. Remember the output you can deliver on. This is the deliverable, and the outcome, it is the impact, it is the consequence, it is that thing that is not totally dependent on you. So which of these here are output based and which of these are outcome based?
Been 75% outcome.
Randy, not hearing you, sorry.
I said Vinta said 75% is outcome.
Yes, the 6, so definitely 6. Randy, that's from you or from the chat?
So,
From the chat, yes.
Yeah. So Stephen,
75% positive feedback is definitely outcome.
Yeah.
Right? Because that is dependent on what people are experiencing.
Yes.
Right? So that is outcome based. So I agree with Stephen. So 6 is outcome. Any other outcome ones?
Yeah, so Stephen said that number 1, 2, 3, 7, and 8 output.
You nicely. So that means 5, 6, and 4. 4, 5, and 6 are outcome. That's what he has?
Yes.
Nice.
And the same thing was said for Ira Isaac.
Very good. You're getting it. That's
Yeah,
right. You
yes.
got it right.
Good.
Because you're raising to raise $0.5 million. It's not about you alone. You can
Alright.
do some work, but there's no guarantee at the end you're gonna have $0.5 million. So that is outcome based. 100% ticket sales. Yes, you can sell the tickets, but are the people going to buy the tickets? That's where you get the sales, right? So that too is dependent on somebody else coming into the picture. And so is 6. Well done, Stephen. Stephen, we should have you teach that class, man. Nice, nice. Yeah.
It was not me, there are several responses in the chat.
Well, you must have started it and people followed. Very good. Well done, guys. Well done, guys. So again, you can widen a room. That's something you can do. You can deliver on that. Once you have your resources, you can deliver on that. Once you have your resources, you can fence, right? Once you have you complete the work, you have the budget, the money is there for you to complete the work in 50,000. So you can do what you want, but complete the work in 50,000. That's on you, right? You can submit a final report by April the 21st, 2013. That is something being submitted by you on a particular date. Somebody can verify that. Was it submitted by April 23rd, 2000? That is verifiable. Then you have the application made to the land registry by April 10th, 2013. Again, these are things you can do and can be verified. Talk to me, Randy.
Yeah, so I see Kizzy Bonnie has 4, 5, 6, and 7 as outcome.
She had 4, 5, 6, and 7 as an outcome?
Yeah.
Okay, but let's talk about that, Kizzy. Kizzy, talk to us. Why you have 7 as an outcome? Anything that you can deliver is an outcome.
Okay, so I'm seeing it. She said that. Sorry, not 7. 8. Yeah. All right.
It's okay.
Yeah, she said not 7. She said it's 8. 8 is the.
She wants 8 as an outcome.
She said she made a mistake with 7. And she said 8 is the outcome.
But let's talk about 8, Kizzy.
Yeah.
Kizzy, why you making 8 an outcome? This is about making an application, so applying to the land registry by a certain time. Can't you do that?
Oh, she's at work. So she can't speak right now.
Okay.
So
application, we would also see that as output.
Yeah.
We would say that this is you preparing the application for submission. Okay, you're making the application. Whether the registry accepts it or not, that would be outcome based, but you can make the application. That's important. So application 8 would also be outputs. Okay.
Yeah.
So we agreed with the people who said that the outputs are 1, 2, 3, 7, and 8. And the outcome based ones are 4, 5, and 6. Okay.
Yeah. All right. I think we have Ira Isaacs. She has a hand up. So
Ira, talk to us.
Yes, thank you, Betsy. Now, I can understand sometimes why we may delay a little in looking at 8, because myself, when I was looking at 7 and 8, I kind of asked myself, what are the contingencies and the other stakeholders that I may need at that time? And sometimes I feel when we are looking at outputs, we need to take into consideration the key factors that will get us there.
Yes.
And that in itself too sometimes can be a bit tricky. Now, this is why I like monitoring, Betsy, because if you're not monitoring over time, you may want to submit by April 23rd, but then you realize that maybe you're missing something from someone else that's outside of your scope, but it still is not an outcome, it's an output.
Yes. It is still an output. And that's a nice way with this thing about when other people are involved. So you have those interfacing with people, but still it is something that you can be accountable for. That's another way to look at it. So with the deliverable, you can be accountable for. You might not be, you might need the input from other people, but once you get that, you can deliver. Right? I don't know if that helps. Again, try to make the distinction between output and outcome. But I agree with you that sometimes to get your output, you are dependent on other people to deliver something to you. But you can still take on the responsibility of accountability for the outputs. The outcome is where there are people that are not committed to you, that you need to get their experience. You need to get something from them, right? So there is still some control, I think, even when you're depending on other people to deliver to you. You have options, you know, like maybe that person is not delivering, so you go to somebody else, or you prepare the thing yourself. You know what I mean? But when it comes to the people's experience, like a customer satisfaction, that cannot be on you alone. That has to depend on that other person. Does that help, Ira?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay, beautiful, beautiful. Okay, so sample measurable objectives, output and outcome. Now what I'm doing here, what I wanted to do is most times when we're doing this, we're planning. And the simplest plan you can put together is an action plan. Now, in our next webinar, we're going to discuss action plans in detail. But I wanted to show you how you can prepare your action plan and ensure your objectives are SMART. So I'm asking some questions, Abina. So let's look at the titles. Let's look at the headers for those columns. So we have goal and we have objective. Now we could have put objective by itself and not put goal. But by putting goal, which letter of SMART are we taking care of? Anybody in the chat? By putting in goal, which letter of SMART are we taking care of?
All right, so people are saying relevant.
Yes, that's right. You are showing the relevance of the objective. That's right. You're showing the alignment, that this objective is aligned to the goal. So I recommend, especially within an organization, and for generally whatever you're trying to do, put the goal somewhere to show it is connected to the goal. Once it's connected to goal, put that goal somewhere. So by putting in the goal, you're showing this objective is related to the goal. And in this case, the goal is enhancing staff competence. The objective is to train at least 2 staff members in project management. Again, we can see that training people in project management contributes to their competence, right? And remember, competence, people, competence. Competence is a combination of things. Competence is your qualification, your skills, your training, your experience, and I like to say the big A. Anybody? What's the big A when it comes to competence? That A word. Anybody?
Attitude.
Attitude. Yes. Yes, that's right. Your attitude, right? And when it comes to competence, your attitude has to be one where you have a growth mindset. Yeah, because we have to understand that we have never reached as far as competence. If competence is this combination of things, if you are, and let's understand what competence is. Competence is your ability to get your desired results. So if you're not getting your desired results, you are lacking something. And the lacking could be as far as experience, it could be skill, it could be training, it could be just your attitude, right? And that's where emotional intelligence becomes so important as well, because emotional intelligence contributes to your competence. That is your ability to get your desired results. Okay, so we went on a little tangent there as far as competence. I couldn't help it. But let's move on. So we know the goal there shows us that it is aligned to the objective or the objective is relevant. Then we have our deliverable. The deliverable, if we achieve this objective, then we would have at least 2 staff members trained in project management. But we went further and we described it, right? When we talk about staff training project management, what do we mean? So in putting the description, which letter in SMART will we addressing?
Stephen said specific.
Yes, yes, definitely specific. Specific is key. And specific is like another term that we can use instead of description. We can say, what is the acceptance criteria? If you achieve that and you achieve it so that it's satisfying, what is it going to look like? So yes, the description makes it specific. Very good. Okay, and if it's an action plan, we must have activities there. And so I put in some activities there. You even make it more specific to her by putting the description of the output and actually listing the associated activities. That's even making it more specific. So you have to identify the PM training. You have to select and consult and confirm with the staff members. You have to register the staff members. You have to pay the fees. You have to allow time off for attendance. And people can probably add to that. That's not a problem, right? Then your performance measure, what will you check? You will check the number of staff members trained in PM, because that was your objective. Train at least 2. So you have to check the number of staff members trained in PM. So that's your performance measure. And according to the objective, your target should be 2 or more, because you said at least. So the measurability is coming in there. The measurability came in from targets. The measurability came in from performance measure. The measurability was even stated from the objective component. All of that was telling you that this is measurable. This is verifiable. That at the end of a period, and then we go to the T. What's the T, people? What's the T? Are you seeing the T? Anybody? The Teen Smart. Anybody, Randy?
We have Kumar, he said time frame.
Yes, it's time frame, and in this case, the time frame is by the second quarter of 2025. So the T is the time frame in the chart there, and it's by the second quarter of 2025. So far we have seen specific, we have seen measurable, we have seen relevant, we have seen time frame. What you think will guide as far as being achievable? Which of those columns there you think it talks to achievability? Anybody? Which of them you think should talk to achievable? Meaning that it is realistic. Anybody, Randy?
No one as yet.
Come on, guys. What do you think they would tell you? I mean, normally when something gets done.
Yeah. Yes. So
What?
Isaac, Isaac said target.
Well, target is more about measurability. Achievability, I would not say so much about target. I think something is closer to achievable. You know, my mother used to say, money makes the mare fly. Anybody else? Which one you
Yeah,
think?
Cheyenne said activities.
Budget. No, activities for achiever, that too can contribute, but I think there's something even more that's closer to showing achievability. A column that is closer to showing achievability.
Binta says number of staff trained.
Anybody else? I'm thinking, remember, achievable means it's realistic. And generally, when we set out a plan, what's normally what prevents us? What prevents us from achieving what we want generally? What's usually a big factor? So you have this comprehensive plan, but what's that thing? Isaac raised the hand. Isaac, talk to me.
Yes, Betty. Okay. So if we're looking at it, what I was looking at, especially me as a project manager, what I look at most of the time is my target, what is my time frame, and what is my budget to get to that target and the time frame.
Your budget. If this budget is $20 million, no way that plan going to be accomplished. That budget is usually an indicator of whether or not that thing is going to happen. And so I like to see a budget that says minimal, the least amount of money you're going to spend on that. So definitely, I would say the most determining factor as far as achievability there relates to that budget, because money makes the mare fly. Anybody familiar with that phrase? Money makes the mare fly. Randy, you familiar with that phrase?
No.
Who is familiar with that phrase? Nobody knows. You know, you buy the whole thing. Once you have the money, anything can happen because a mare is a female horse, right? Anybody help me out there? Why nobody helping me out there?
No.
Anyway, so I think your budget.
It might be a solution phrase. I don't know.
No.
So,
It's no solution phrase. It's an English phrase. Anybody? Stephen, you've never heard that?
oh, I don't know.
Money makes the mare
Well,
fly.
Yeah, I've heard the phrase, but I was just about to comment on the matter of the realistic. I think the
Yes.
budget might be the most important, but I don't think the budget is the
agree.
only determinant.
I agree. I agree. But
I think the
yes,
activities and
I agree.
and the time frame also would
True,
contribute to
true.
determine whether
But
it's
we agree the budget would be a key significant factor. I agree with you.
yes.
There are other contributing, but I think the key thing is budget. And so when you do those action plans, pay attention to the budgets. The budget can make it happen or not happen. Very important. But I agree that time, activities, all of that can contribute as far as being realistic and achievable. Okay, but budget is key. Okay, so it would have to be determined for that action plan to be complete. The budget associated with the training of those people would have to be placed in today. Because if it's thousands and thousands of dollars, the company is more likely to say, oh, sorry, we cannot manage that. We okay? Any questions with regard to this? So there in an action plan, we have showed you how, one, we didn't address one. There's one we did not talk to, the responsibility. You know, if you want something done, somebody must be responsible. Now, the responsible person doesn't mean that it is the person who has to do the work, but it means it is the person that is accountable for that particular objectives. And that's why I like Drucker when he said that he had that A as assignable. So I used to say, put 2 A's in SMART. Put assignable and put achievable, right? But put somebody responsible, very important. Any comments, any questions on this? Again, this is just a sample template. We have actually gone into action planning, which we will be doing in the next webinar, okay? In the next webinar, we'll make that even more comprehensive. You'll be surprised how comprehensive we can make this, okay? But for now, we wanted to make sure that SMART was coming through. Any comments on this? Any questions? Okay, so let's go. So again, yes, go ahead.
Yeah, if I just make one comment on the question
Yes.
of budget, I just to be clear, so by budget, you're actually referring to the cost
Yes,
as
the
opposed to
cost.
the allocation.
The
As opposed
cost.
to the allocation.
Thank you. Yes, the
It does make
cost.
it
Yes,
does
that's
make a
very
difference in
important.
the budget,
Yes, it is the cost budget. So if you think maybe I could put cost there, but yes, or put budget / cost. Yes, I agree. Be clear on that. This is not about an allocation. This is how much is it going to cost for me to train 2 staff members in project management. You need to know that. Because if that cost is too high, more than likely this thing is not going to be achievable. Okay, but I agree, like Stephen and like I think Cheyenne mentioned activities. I agree, activities. I think that I mentioned targets. A lot of things come into play. But I tell you what my mother told me. It's money makes the mare fly. Budget is key. So it will have to be determined. Okay, very good. And so I like when I'm preparing an action plan, I like when under budget I can put minimal costs. Because I know that's not going to cost a lot of money, and more than likely it is achievable because of that. Any other comments or questions before we go on to a second sample of this? We're good. We're good. Randy, could be asked in the chat, are people okay? Do you able to see SMART? Do we have to do a refresher? So again, we set SMART objectives: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. And so we're seeing we have an action plan there, and we have been able to get SMART objectives because we had the objective here, which already had its performance measure, but we pulled it out. We said it was number of staff trained in PM, and there was a target of 2. So it is measurable at the end of this period, at the end of the second quarter of 2025, do you have at least 2 people trained in project management? That is verifiable. Okay, so the measurability is there. We showed how it was aligned to an organizational goal. And so the word relevant came into there. We spoke about it being specific and clearly defined. And so we gave it a descriptor. And along with the descriptor, we even listed activities associated with it. It is clearly defined, right? And then the time frame is there, like we said, and we went further so that we have a budget. And I think the budget, like I said, contributes to it being achievable, as well as other people mentioned activities, but I really think the key one there is budget. And then we went further and we added responsibility. Who is accountable for that particular objective? It doesn't mean they're the one doing the work, but at the end of the day, the buck stops with the manager. Do we have 2 or more people trained in project management? Randy, do we have any questions, any comments before we move on to the next one?
No comments, no questions. I think we could move on.
Okay, so this was a work-related example, and we're talking about, we want you to see the value of this at work, and we want to see the value of this at home. So we had to do a home example. And I think people will enjoy that particular other example. So there we have it again. So this time, look at our goal. Ira, what do you think of that goal? Enhance my romantic relationship. Ira, what's your take on that?
You see, you know, I'm married to my work. You're asking the person.
So again, we're taking it at home, because too many times at home, we are saying we are going to improve and we don't, because again, we're not being smart with our objectives. So this is the objective here, is to reduce the criticism of my partner. I think a lot of us hear that around, you know, we're too critical. I find here, women, men, sometimes we're too critical of our partners. So again, this is linked to enhancing your romantic relationship, because people don't like criticism. People don't like criticism, and it can hurt. So we have the objective: reduce criticism of the partner, enhance my romantic relationship. We're making it very personal there. So the output or deliverable, if it's you reducing criticism, then there should be less criticism directed at my partner, right? I'm reducing the criticism, there's less criticism directed at my partner, right? The description of the output or deliverables, so I'm giving some supporting stuff there. There should be less complaining, less use of derogatory language, less blame, and you can probably add to that to make it more descriptive, right? Because all this can be seen as criticism directed at the person. Now, activities related to that, some of the activities, and you can actually remember, this is just a sample. This is not set in stone, right? So activities we have, because sometimes we don't do that. We just say exactly what, but we need to think, because our aim is to criticize less, right? We highlight the positives, all that is helping towards the less criticism. We listen without interruption, you know, because the minute they say something, you have something coming right away, you know, before you even hear the whole story, you are already criticizing. We use our complaint jar. Now, Omar, Omar, tell us about the complaint jar. Omar, you're in the group there. You tell us about the complaint jar.
The complaint jar is basically an incentive, so that anytime you complain, you put 25 cents in the jar. So it's going to cost you every time you complain.
Okay, and we must give that money to somebody, I guess.
Yes, you can give it to your partner. So
Okay,
at least
there
he
you go.
benefits.
Then that means that my partner might enjoy the complaining if he benefiting from it. But keep in mind that you something to note. Okay, now the performance measure wall, what will you check? You will check the average number of times I criticize my partner in a week, right? And so when you do that average, now here's something you need to note. When it comes to measurable objectives, whenever you see the word reduce, decrease, increase, more than likely you need some baseline data for comparison, right? You're saying reducing, so where are you at now? And so you must have an idea of how many times you're criticizing this person within a week. And so the average 4 times a week. you're criticizing this person. And so you said, okay, I want to reduce it. We know it's taking time, do it gradually. Don't be overzealous, right? So we say the targets, let's criticize once a week. That's improvement. From 4 times a week to once a week, that is improvement. Okay, the responsibility is mine. This is about mine. And the time frame is by December 2024. Make the man happy for Christmas, make the woman happy for Christmas. Budget, I like anything that says minimal budget. That's more about that's more a change you have to make that doesn't require much money from you, except if you're using your complaint jar and you need to put money in it. What do you think of that example, people? Talk to me.
I bet, yeah. That's a lot of measurement, you have to do.
That's what, but you see, Stephen, you see the relationship is important to you. When something is important to you and you're trying to make an improvement, you should have a way of verifying. You need to make it measurable. Don't put any less importance on the romantic relationship than the relationships in the workplace. Any other comments?
In the chat, we have a comment, actually a contingency plan from Ira. She said that contingency plan for enhanced romantic relationship is find love language, use love language daily, and measure satisfaction.
Yeah, and so Ira, and all of these are this can be individual objectives, Ira, because it's all, remember the goal is broad and the objectives are more specific. So all of these you're giving there are other strategies that can be used to enhance your romantic relationship. So I like that you bring in what it brings about. And that's another thing. When we start off with the goal, come up with different strategies. And from the strategies, take on a particular objective that you're going to try to meet in a particular time. Because you can't do everything together, right? But decide what you can work on, what is achievable for you, and you work on that. But yes, I agree. There are other strategies, meaning that there are other objectives too that you can apply to enhancing your romantic relationship. So this is just this one. Many times we're trying to do too many things, and because we try to do too many things, we cannot track progress. Okay? So take it one at a time and track the progress. Any other questions? Any other comments?
So, Brenda, just to be clear, so what's the outcome?
Now that's a good point. That's a good point there, Stephen. So notice that because the outcome, now all you can do, this thing about criticism, it's on you. You can decide to criticize or not to criticize. Now, the outcome you're hoping for is the enhancement of your romantic relationship, which is not just about you. Because it could be that is not the issue as far as maybe your partner doesn't mind the complaining. He doesn't mind the criticism, right? But an outcome there would be you enhancing your romantic relationship. Because once this relationship is not just about you, 2 people are involved. So an outcome so your goal is seen there as an outcome.
So the outcome is the enhanced relationship, yeah?
Yes, the enhanced relationship, which is not totally dependent on you.
Right, and however that manifests itself.
However that might, and so it would be good to describe how would you know, what are the indicators of success? So that's another, it goes on. The thing is, whenever you have the goal or objective, this thing of what is acceptance criteria, what are the success factors? It is good to just know that. So when it happens, everybody knows it's happening. And then, like Ira said, it's not just the reducing of the that will lead to the enhancing of the romantic relationship. The love language is another important. And know the love language and simply speak the love language. That's another way you can enhance the relationship. And I'm sure Ira can give us a whole lot of other examples of how you enhance the romantic relationship. So we just chose one objective and we showed how that objective can be smart. Questions, comments? Lynn, yes, Lynn. Lynn raised her hand. Hi, Lynn.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
In activities, the last one, use a complaint jar.
Mm-hmm.
Well, probably whoever put that should have put use a monetary complaint jar. But I would also include I would also include like a suggestion jar, because sometimes when people get
Yes.
annoyed or angry or whatever, they cannot express themselves verbally. So
Yes.
probably there should be a jar where you write down your
Yes.
suggestion, or even simply, I am sorry, or I'm sorry, it will not happen again.
Noted. Thank
There
you,
should
Lynn.
be
Yes, I
a-
agree. I agree.
there should
I
be
agree.
a literary then complaint jar.
A literary complaint jar. There you go. Thank you
And
so much for that.
That would, I think,
So
because
we have, mhm.
it does happen where with
Yes.
my partner and I
Yes.
just cannot express myself how dastardly I feel.
Yes.
I rather write it down, and then he
Thank
would
you.
have
Yes.
might have a clearer idea of how I feel about a certain situation, whatever. That's it.
Yeah, I like that. Yes, definitely. Because I'm concerned about the money going in that complaint jar and who gets the money. You know, so yes. So use a complaint, and we'll also put use a suggestion or literary jar. Thank you so much, Lynn. Anybody else wants to add to this? And again, what
And
we
I just
say
find,
is,
I'm just
Mhm.
finding that second example, Betty, is sounding a lot more complicated than the training people in project management, you know.
I told them, isn't the romantic relationship the more complicated one, Stevens?
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, that's all.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah, but if it's important to us, we have to get in the habit of doing it systematically and doing it. You have to be intentional, Stephen. We have to start being intentional with our romantic relationship.
I understand, but you can see why some people lose themselves in their work, right? It's easier.
Well, you see that's bad. But I see your point, Stephen. I see your point.
But can I add something, Betty?
Sure.
As I'm looking at this,
Mhm.
it's very, I looked at your two examples and they're very relevant, especially when you're looking at the gold.
Yes.
The first one was really easy for me to track. I must say the last one got me a little ticklish. So then it comes in the objective and the subjective outcomes of usually of what is there.
Yes.
And sometimes, for instance, in healthcare, I always tell persons, while we're dealing for customer satisfaction, the long-term outcome is healthy people.
Yes.
And sometimes in our goals and our outcomes, we need to look at it not from a one-time standpoint, but measure it across a space of time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, definitely. Another thing you need to notice with this particular one is the achievability is also there, that I can see the targets coming into play as far as apart from the budget, because again, you're doing it 4 times a week and you're not saying you're never going to do it. So you gradually decreasing it and you say average of once a week, right? So it's more achievable. It's more realistic. It is more doable than trying to say, I will never criticize again. Okay, so there's an example where the target and the baseline is contributing to the achievability as well as that budget is there, minimal budget. Okay, so yes, guys. So again, if it's important to you, then you need to be able to monitor. Ira, you'd like that word? You need to be able to monitor. You need to be able to track. You need to be able to evaluate. Okay, and the SMART objectives allow you to do that. Okay, so we are moving on from that and we're done with the presentation more or less. And so Binta, all yours.
Hi, again, everybody. As usual, Betty and very animated examples. And for me, as somebody doing a master's in project management, this is one of my skills gap that I've noticed I want to improve upon. So there's a lot of notes I've been taking, and mental notes and physical notes as well. So thank you so very much, Betty, for the examples, and thank you to you participants for your input, because I'm learning from your inputs as well. So I really appreciate it. It's a very spirited discussion today. And so should you have any questions or questions and see how Betty can best answer them, feel free. I know a few people are very, very active and there are persons who are not. So those who maybe shy in terms of speaking or who are unable to use the microphone at this moment, feel free to use the chat and let's see what other questions you come up with based on the session today.
And you know, Binta, I teach project management, and that point you made, I find it is a weakness in a lot of our people in making objectives measurable. Most people put down goals and they try to work from the goal. The goal is broad. You need to break down the goal into smaller units called objectives and make that smart. So it is an issue I've found with a lot of our people, especially getting it measurable. Getting measurable is always a problem. So
I will
yes,
definitely be
to
using
practice
this
more.
presentation to
Yes.
go through, especially I'm doing my gender action plan, and I want to do more monitoring and evaluating of what I'm doing in gender mainstreaming. And I just think that although I have basics done, but I know for sure I'm so lacking. So this presentation today definitely I can say has helped me. So hopefully I build my skills and become more skilled at this. Thank you very
Yes,
much.
with
I see
practice.
Stephen has his hand up. So
Stephen?
Yes, Betty, would it be possible for you to go back to the first example, please?
Sure.
I want to, yeah,
This one?
yes.
Mhm.
Right, so, now not to split hairs on these, but when I looked at it,
Split it.
when I looked at it, because, you know, sometimes I not only take on work as a consultant, executing a project, but sometimes I'm advising a client on the definition of a project and the procurement of services and so on. And looking at the, so for example, here you talk about at least 2 staff members trained, and then you talk about number of staff members trained. But the thought that came to my mind is, okay, so how do we determine the person has been trained? Does that imply that we need to go a further step and talk about certification or completion of the training or some measurement of the training, some
can.
additional step?
You
Right.
can,
So
yes, you can. Again, you notice it says identify PM training. And in identifying the PM training, you'd probably have some criteria. Because according to you, look at your description. Your description says in accordance with best practices. So you have something
Right, so
to
then-
guide. Yes.
yeah, so not only do you have to say they've been trained, by saying they have been trained, you also have to validate that they have been trained in accordance with best practices. I guess what you would have done by selection of the training or by
Yes. Yes.
of the training.
Mhm.
And one might even need to go further, depending on the circumstances, and say, well, have they absorbed that training?
Again, so maybe you want maybe just not just train, you want certification in project management.
Right.
Maybe that's what you want. You say again, it's
Right.
based on what you want. So based on what you want,
Yes.
you action plan according. But I think this is very important, the description of that, what is going to satisfy me and satisfy you. So if it is certified persons you want in project management, then that needs to be stated in there. So that means an assessment
Yes.
will have to be done, an evaluation will have to be done.
Right. Well, I think for practical perspective, you can do it iteratively. So you might draft it as like this at first, and then you might look at it and say, okay, well, if I train, how do I satisfy myself that they've been properly trained? And then you might decide, okay, maybe I have to go to one level further to refine. But
Yes.
but I would agree that you want to have something high level initially to focus your thoughts, and then you can.
That's right. And then you can break it down further. I agree. I agree with that wholeheartedly. But I am of the opinion, by the way, that when it comes to project management, there are 2 bodies of knowledge that I think everybody should know about. And it is project management and it is quality management. Because these things are related to operational work and project work that all of us are involved in. You're having a party for your child, that's a project, right? So for me, just the training in the body of knowledge is important. To me, certification, it doesn't even have to have a certificate attached to it. Just the fact that you're exposed to the body of knowledge, I think that brings something to an organization. That's my take on it. Because it has to be, if we say everybody has to know about it, then the material has to be kept simple. And things like exams should not deter people from learning about it. Yes, Ira.
Yes, thank you, Betty. Now, I'll try not to stay long, but you see, there's something that I'm working on in a space and time, which is project management, as you said, and quality management, and having overall strategic planning. And one of the things I've realized with us in the region, and I'm speaking from a regional standpoint, is that we have not really been good at setting good strategic plans. And that in itself takes away from us knowing what our goals are and then setting that objective over time. And while you're saying that we have I know it's poor practice in project management, one of the reasons for that would be, Betty, quality. If we understand that quality in itself is the DNA of an organization and a system, and if that quality in itself of everything that we're doing and we are not measuring it over time in the outcomes that we are having, then you have an unhealthy organization, which leads to unhealthy systems.
Yes.
You know, and I say that way because we tend to look at it separately. And I always tell persons that when you look at the body, the brain does not say, I'm not working today, nor the heart. It all coincides together. And that's the DNA composition of why we do what we do, if I can put it that way.
Yes. And again, to piggyback on what you were saying there, I mean, this is about applying PDCA. This is about that if you're running any system, that there are 4 things you must be doing that are integrative. You must be doing planning. You must be doing, which is your implementation, your execution. You must be checking, which is your monitoring, your monitoring, your evaluation, your measuring, your inspecting, your verification, your validation, your assessment, and you must be acting to improve. And the only way you can act to improve is to act to improve from analyzing data. This is about data. This is about collecting data that lets you know how you are doing and what else you need to do. Yeah. Anybody else? Any other comments? Randy? We okay?
From me, what I noticed, Betty, from where I stand, I'm a public sector worker, I realized that we don't assess outcomes of our initiatives and our whatever programs, activities. So we have this sometimes a false sense of success because we have outputs. I think we are so output focused. That I had the meeting. I'm going to have a meeting tomorrow. I'm going to be speaking to my gender focal points, and
I
did this.
Yes,
but there is such a lack of assessing outcomes.
Yes,
and
I agree with
you
that.
said the word data. Like this is one of my pet peeves because I always want to know that whatever I'm doing is successful. And that's why I'm still doing project management, but I'm a novice in the field, so I'm still learning, and that's what I really want to be able to like hone these skills, because I think it's really necessary for public sector management.
Yeah, and there have been a shift in the project management body of knowledge in recent years, in that they are stressing more outcome-based. It's more outcome-based versus process-based. So project management used to stress you have a number of different processes, and especially the Americans and the PMBOK, the 7th version. This went through a total overhaul where the focus is on it has to be outcome-based. What are you trying to achieve, and work back from that? So what do you need to deliver on to be able to achieve that impact, that effect, or that consequence you want? So this is not just, I'm telling you that. And for all of you involved with funding agencies, you know they stress that. What are the outcomes? You have to demonstrate that you can deliver as close to the desired outcomes as possible. Yeah. And when we talk about competence, your ability to achieve your desired results, your results are not just output results, it's outcome results as well. And so when outcome becomes, it involves other people, then things like relationship management becomes very important. And so increasing your competence is also increasing your emotional intelligence to be able to get the outcomes that you want. If all you're concerned about outputs, then so be it. But when we start looking at outcomes, it takes a lot more from us. Any other questions or comments?
Betty, can I ask a question?
By all means.
Being on a regional level, what I've noticed is that we're very donor funded driven in our reporting. And a lot of the times, because there is such a strict time bound and a target that has been setting the indicators and meeting the indicators, Betty, it sometimes forces us to really look at the outputs for reporting purposes and not the outcome. And a lot of the times, Betty, that comes by the indicators are not set by us. A lot of the times we are given the indicators to achieve, and sometimes they're not even realistic for the systems that we are in. So the outcome takes a lot more time to get to sometimes. And so therefore it forces us to be very output driven. But what we have noticed is that because we're not looking at the outcomes, we're never looking at where the fire is and where the true, what I would call, say, the root cause of the problem. And so the outputs is you really outing the fires along the way, but you never really giving a proper solution for over time.
And that's where the logic model and the results chain is so important. And we did that session. We did a webinar on that. For people who have not used, because that's has been uploaded. But the logic model or the results chain forces you to start off with the outcome and then take it down, right down to the inputs. So yeah, I mean, the funding is coming in, but you say because it takes more time, and what you're trying to do is deliver on what the funding agency wants, you're not going to focus on outcomes if they're not asking you for outcomes. But I find lately, and I think Binta probably stressed that, lately I find there is more of a focus on outcomes, and because they want to ensure there is sustainability with these projects. Binta, are you noticing that?
From where I sit, I'm still back on we're output driven. I don't see us too outcome driven. I said recently there's a project, and I know for sure it will be reported that there was a success, but the project happened.
Yes.
But in terms of the impact of the project and on the constituents, so while I do agree with what Ira is saying that we are we have to acquiesce to donors demands, for want of a better word. But if we ourselves have our own organic systems that's developed by us, we can use a donor fund and tell them, yeah, this is your output, and this is the output. But if we are truly focused on development and that development is impactful, we should have our own systems developed that while we get the donors fund to do the outputs, we now on our own should be measuring our outcomes to see best practices, challenges, and going forward. So in my where I sit, still output driven, but we have two hands.
But the good thing to that is project management is focusing, there's a more outcome focused approach. The new thinking with project management, it is more outcome focused approach. So if you're claiming to be a project manager, you're doing project management, you have to start demonstrating that you're taking both into consideration, outputs and outcome.
We have two hands in the chat. I think we have Lynn, we'll start with Lynn, and then we'll go on to Stephen.
Yes, Lynn. Lynn, are you muted?
Sorry, I was on mute, sorry. Somebody a while ago raised a subject about strategic planning, but I'm looking at this again, and what jumped out at me from the screen is action plan. Is there a difference between an action plan and strategic planning?
Yes.
Because to me, well, okay, help me there. Strategic planning is a planning along
long-term
timelines. Because you
Long-term-
have a strategic plan for 3 years, 4 years, 5 years.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
Right.
And action plans are usually more operational. They're short term.
Right, okay, I just.
But Lynn,
Yeah.
that's a good, but the link, the two have to be aligned. And that is where you see that goal would come from a strategic plan.
Right.
And now you come up with an objective that contributes toward that goal. So over the years, more and more objectives would be established that are related to that particular goal. So that alignment of strategic is there. And that's why I keep putting it into the action plan, because sometimes we don't see the connection. So we prepare a strategic plan and it's on a shelf collecting dust. And we're not seeing how the day-to-day activities are related to it. But when you do your action plan, which is more operational, which is more short-term, and when you put in the goal would have come from a strategic plan. Good
Okay,
question.
all
Good
right,
comment.
thank you.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that.
All right.
Stephen?
Yeah, I was just going to comment on the matter of the outcome versus the output and our focus on output. I think, again, there are some practical constraints that we need to be aware of. And I think Binta's suggestion just now that the countries, well, whoever we are, the countries need to perhaps take on more of the responsibility for the
Yes,
outcome assessment
own,
is
yes.
probably the correct one. Because bear in mind that unfortunately, the reality is that the funding in many cases are really based on contracts. Not just contracts between, say, the implementing agency and the consultant, but even the funding itself that, say, the government may receive from the World Bank is usually based on a contract with a finite lifetime. And so it has to be constrained to things that can be done within the lifetime of that contract.
Yeah.
Outcomes, unfortunately, the reality is may take a lot more time to determine. And it may not be possible, it's not always possible to determine them within the lifetime of a contract, unless you have a contract that allows for a gap after the outputs are delivered to see what the impact is. So I think the suggestion that we may need to take on that challenge ourselves and say, all right, depending on the nature of the intervention, X months or X years after that intervention, we are going to do some assessment of the outcome and get there. The second thing is the process of determining outcomes itself can be fairly complicated. I mean, I'm not an expert on M&E, but I had some training in the area. And sometimes it even requires things like randomized control trials to determine whether or not you've had an impact. Because you have to try and figure out within a population how many people were influenced by the activities of the project. And some of these things can be quite expensive to do. So all this to say that it can be quite complicated, it can be expensive, but I think the correct attitude is to say that we are going to take on this challenge and we're going to make it happen.
Let's try, people. Let's try. Yes. Yes. Thank you. Binta, time. Yes, I read last
Sorry,
question. And
let
then
me,
yes,
not a
go ahead.
question, but a comment to Stephen. I agree
Yes.
with Stephen, and as someone who really loves M&E and quality together, I would like to say that sometimes you can't get that incentives from the funder to check your outcome. If you gear it back towards once you are successful, you can template this project in another island, because we did that for St. Lucia Quality Management System that is spreading across the region right now, because we did our assessment in such a way that we showed the benefit of that project. No, so what am I saying? A lot of the times, right, the onus is on us, but we can build it into the project because they too want to show their results to their own investors as well.
Yes. Yes. Thank you so much for that. Okay, Binta, we need to round off with questions.
Yes, it was a very interesting session. I know that we have on time and I have some other appointments to have things to do, assignments to do. So Betty, we go back to you to just give an overview of the GPM network structure.
Yes, so when we started off, Binta told you what we were trying to do with the GPM, and we have a network structure related to the GPM, which is currently on the screen. And you will see the forum group. And so we are the members of the forum group. Currently, this is the only active group, right? But the group, the GPM have other groups. They have the financing and resource, we have the advocacy, we have the membership. But at this point, we're taking it slowly and we're taking it gradually, and has been progressive. The more active group right now is the forum group. We're hoping that the forum group gets big enough that then people can take on the responsibilities of the other group. Okay, so this is a call to join the forum group. Okay, and so this is, we're asking people to think about it. Once you decide you're interested, we will send you more documentation for you to say definitely yes or no. But our sustainability development is our business. And I think we must not forget that. This is not about the funding agency, this is about us. And so we have to play our part. Okay, so like I said, before you leave, before you leave, you can probably indicate your interest or contact us and let us know you're interested in joining the forum group. And I pass it over to you, Binta.
All righty, thank you very much, Betty, and hopefully people take you up on that call. And so, the webinar we are part of is the 4th of the series. We have a continuous improvement, which occurred in June. There's a results chain and logic model presented in November of last year, actually. Addressing risks was presented in April 2024, and we are now in the setting smart objectives, outputs, and outcomes. So our next webinar would be next year, would be action planning. So we do hope that when we do send out the information that you participate, register, and share within your network. And yes, so you can just connect with us. We are on Facebook, as well as we do have a YouTube channel. So you can watch, those who have issues accessing the Facebook pages right now can also access the YouTube page. So you can actually listen to the webinar, view the webinar via YouTube as well. And our contact information for Facebook, the email, I think Randy also shared the YouTube link in the chat. So those of you who want to maybe click on the YouTube link so you can get access to it. So when we upload this one, you can see, but you can also view our other webinar sessions. So with that, everybody, if you have any feedback, feel free again to contact us via our emails, as well as via Facebook as well. And you can put something in the chat before we leave. Again, I really, really enjoyed this session, and it is so relevant to where I am right now in the work that I'm currently doing. So I'm very, very thankful for that session this evening. So if you have no more feedback, let me know. Again, write in the chat. Thank you so very much for attending, and we look forward to your attendance at future webinars, as well as joining our forum.
And so just before you leave, we asked if you could just share with us what your experience was with this webinar. We had a targeted experience in mind. We're not sure if we accomplished it. Only if we hear from you, we will know. So before you leave the webinar, if you could just type in what your experience was with this particular webinar, we would really appreciate that.
Okay, Betty and everyone, I see everyone is actually leaving the chat, but we have some really positive comments in the chat. So timely,
Yeah.
great presentation, relevant, informative, lovely session. So it
Beautiful. Well
was,
done,
yeah,
guys.
well received.
Well done, guys. Okay,
Yes.
so we're saying good night and so Randy, we have stopped recording.
Yes, I will stop recording.